Investigations Unit. So welcome. This year we're doing it a bit differently due to the COVID restrictions, due to everything that we observed when it comes to COVID. Okay, apologies for the slight technical difficulties, and I hope that you'll be able to continue to hear me. I'd just like to go through some ground rules for this particular webinar. If we can please make sure that we are being interactive, and we can do that by using our chat box. Within our chat box, you can give us feedback, you can give us comments, you can also flag questions that you would like to ask our presenters. Not to waste too much time, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Mbuso Ngobo, who is the Chartered Secretary from the Certified International Auditor Certified Fraud Examiner. He has a Master's of Business Administration, which he obtained through the Hindi Business School, University of Reading in the UK. He also has 10 years of leadership experience in the public sector. I spent about 8 years in the investigation unit called CII Integrity Municipality, and about 4 years responsible for audit and risk services at KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health. As the head of CIIU, Mbuso is responsible for, amongst other things, developing and implementing the strategy for integrity, ethics, and anti-fraud and anti-corruption programs within the municipality, which of course is no mean feat. This entails things like overseeing the development and implementation of prevention and detection programs to curb the scourge of fraud and corruption within the municipality. Another critical part of Mr. Ngobo's role is to lead a forensic investigation team, which is mandated with the responsibility for investigating allegations relating to fraud, corruption, and related offenses within the municipality. I don't know if I'd be correct in saying that maybe he is our very own Zondo from the Zondo Commission, Mr. Mbuso Ngobo. I know you have no association. As Chief Director responsible for Audit Risk Management Services at KZN Health, Mbuso was responsible for, amongst other things, the development and implementation of clean audit program, risk management, forensic investigations, and consequence management. Prior to joining KZN Health, Mr. Ngobo was a Group Auditor Manager at Itala Development Finance. And besides the above-mentioned experiences, he has over 17 years experience serving in various positions within the areas of administration, accounting and finance, internal auditing, and forensic investigations in public and private sectors. So welcome, Mr. Ngobo. It's good to hear an extensive CV like this. It gives us a lot of confidence in what we're about to hear from you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Program Director.
Unfortunately, our event coincided with the meeting that is taking place, the MPEC meeting. So hence, actually, all the members of MPEC were unable to be with us this morning. And also from the side of the administration leadership, I had a discussion with the acting city manager, the acting accounting officer, Musambele, and Musambele obviously wished us all the best, and obviously he gave us the assignment. He said that obviously the leadership of the municipality is hoping that we will provide feedback to the executive of the municipality with suggestions which indicate how we can make contribution to arrest the issues of fraud and corruption, which I think actually is a bit of is an interesting challenge, and I think it's also in line with what is written in the invite. I saw somewhere where it says I think there was a question which is being asked: are we achieving our aim to reduce fraud and corruption? It's like, are we doing enough? I think actually the call by our leaders is, for me, I think is in line with that. Thank you. And the presentation, please.
Okay, we'll be very eager to a presentation now from the head of CIIU. Are we ready?
I can't see it. Okay. Thank you. Can we, obviously, I think actually maybe let me indicate that look, this is the International Fraud Awareness, as the director is the program director has indicated, fraud awareness. I think for the purpose for today's session, I felt that it's proper that we will be talking to what we as a municipality are doing in relation to this subject. I will indicate what the unit, especially City Integrity Investigation Unit, is doing proactively to deal with these issues, and also what we're doing reactively in terms of investigations up to consequence management. We'll talk to those things, and whenever actually we engage various stakeholders, we remind them about actually the fraud and corruption, actually indicating what is fraud and what is corruption, and then actually we take it from there. In line with that, actually, we try to define fraud. Obviously, I'm happy that actually listening to us, fraud examiners. Fraud is defined as intentional misrepresentation which results in financial prejudice. We also indicating the examples of fraud on the first slide. First slide, actually, we also indicate the examples of fraud. Why actually we first slide, please. Why actually we emphasize on this point? Because actually we want actually when our officials get involved in these activities, so that they can't at any stage claim that they don't know what fraud is. We actually clear out to that. We indicate to them that fraud actually talks to misappropriation of funds, theft of assets, embezzlement, forgery, alteration of any documentation, including accounts or checks or anything. Bribery is also a form of fraud. In the case of a municipality, we've got actually properties, illegal or irregular sale of municipal properties. Our unit has worked extensively in investigation of these allegations relating to those types of issues. Creation of fictitious vendors, duplicate payments, and payments of services not rendered. I'm touching on these things because obviously I'm talking from experience. My unit almost on a daily basis deal with these issues where actually you find that payments have been effected to service providers for services which have not been actually received. That's fraud. There's also the issues of sick leave and overtime abuse. This fraud, obviously, which is being perpetrated by those implicated. And breach of supply chain management processes also talks to issues of irregularity. So when you do this type of things, we talk on those things. For those who are actually CFE or forensic investigation professionals, they will understand there's a doctor, I remember it's Dr. Donald Chrissy, who is a scholar from America, who developed the fraud triangle. Actually, he said that for fraud to happen, there has to be these three things: rationalization, pressure, opportunity. I won't actually dwell much into that. Then actually, as part of actually also engaging with our stakeholders, we try to explain to them what we understand what is corruption. Corruption is the use of public office for private gain, where a public official entrusted with carrying out the task by the public engages in unethical conduct for private enrichments. So instead of doing what they are employed for, or what actually their job is, people actually tend to do what they do to enrich them, actually to put money into their pocket. That's actually what corruption talks to. There's various forms of corruption. Actually, this is endless. But obviously, I'm talking those briefly described on the slide. Next slide. So I think actually for our environment, it's important to touch on the political what is called political corruption. There's a scholar from USA, New York University, who said instead of selling their political ideologies, politicians nowadays use money to direct or influence political outcomes. Hence, in his view, the corrupt political system results in corrupt or incompetent leaders being elected to critical positions of power, thereby destroying governance in the public sector. I think that's very important, actually, because once actually incompetent leaders are elected, what do we expect in terms of good governance? Then obviously, collusion is another form of corruption, which happens actually when there are two bidders involved, when they have overlapping interest, and obviously with several licenses, and if these bidders agree to allocate this interest. So in other words, actually, these two competitors sort of engage, sit together and agree, they collude. It's another form of corruption. Price fixing is another form of corruption. Obviously, we've got the legislation in our country, Section 45 of the Competition Act, which prohibits price fixing as actually a criminal element. Obviously, we know about the state captures where private firms use laws for their own benefit by influencing the formation of basic rules of the game through private payments to public officials. So when actually private officials actually gets paid by the private firms, obviously this is corruption, which can then lead to a state capture. Hence, we are aware in the country there's this state capture going on actually. Then money laundering is the use of money. In essence, it is a process of making dirty money appear to be clean. Dirty money will never be clean, but once you engage in various mechanisms to try and make money appear to be clean, you're actually involved in money laundering. Hence, actually, people use they exchange money through casinos, car wash businesses, buying various things, even cattle, to try actually and make money to appear to be clean. But basically, corruption is money laundering. Money derived from money laundering activities will never be clean. Hence, we use the word appear to be clean. And investments, actually, offshore investments, that's when actually companies are, foreign companies or businesses established with an objective of moving and making money overseas, thereby actually avoiding paying taxes. Hence, there's what is called the Panama Papers. There's a case that was well publicized, actually, where a number of companies were involved in the Panama Papers. Actually, that was called companies were involved in the offshore investments. Maybe we also touching on, we feel that it's important for us to touch on the consequences of corruption. Corruption has negative effects on investment, economic growth, and development, which obviously is the very devastating as far as the country is concerned. Corruption has much the same. Corruption increases poverty and income inequality, and always tend to act as a regressive tax on the poor. The people who suffer the most from corruption are the poor people, unfortunately. It's not actually you and I are the poor, actually people actually from shacks, people actually who are unemployed. That's why actually according to the World Bank report, which was published in 2000, it says the burden of corruption falls on poor people. For those without money and political connections, corruption in the public sector can have debilitating consequences. Corruption affects the lives of poor people through many other channels as well. Unfortunately, the people who suffer the most from corrupt activities are the poor. In terms of what we do, like I did indicate that I'll talk on what we do. We also talk on the issues of ethics and integrity when we engage various stakeholders. Public sector integrity management framework defines ethics and integrity as follows. Ethics is broadly defined as well-based standards of right and wrong that prescribe our rights, obligations, and benefits to society. Ethics is about how we ought to live, treat others, run or manage our lives in organizations. And integrity means steadfast adherence to a strict moral or ethical code, policy or legal instruments and preceding codes. Ethos, actually, that's what I like the most, because it talks to your inner conscience. Ethos deals with the deeper matters of conscience. Ethos requires public officials to go beyond ethics and to possess an internal drive and willingness to do what is right or ethical. In Zulu, ethos is what is called unembeza. Unembeza will actually tell you when you are, unembeza will always tell you when you are doing something right or wrong. That's actually what we mean by ethos. Your conscience. Integrity and ethics are the cornerstone of governance. This is our view, that obviously without actually integrity and ethics, governance is compromised. That's why we believe that the community expects ethical behavior from government functionaries, including officials and leaders, that actually all involved in the public sector have to act ethically and obviously. Example. As you can see, there's a picture there. You can see that obviously that official there is a theft of employer's time, using actually the misuse of the assets of the municipality. In this case, of the organization. In this case, the computer, while actually the people actually who come for service are watching. We've spoken to the different types of frauds. I won't dwell much into that. And these are actually some of the issues that we engage the various stakeholders when we talk to them. Leave fraud, I've talked about that. Overtime abuse, payments of salary to fraudulent bank accounts. Obviously, there's been media publicities, as you can see, officials suspended over jobs for pairs, those type of things, and jobs for sales and scams, nepotism, irregular employee practices, ghost employees, which is a serious issue in most organizations, and obviously failure to declare business interest, which is in terms of legislation, public officials or public servants are required to declare their business interest. As a city integrity investigations, that's we do our work in terms of these pillars. We've got the hotline, which is 0800 2020. This, I would say, is the most effective mechanism that is being used by people to report the criminal elements or the allegations to be investigated. We have the hotline, which is manned by an outside organization. We also rely on management controls. When they pick up issues, then actually they report to us. We've got internal audit. When they do what they do, they pick up red flags. That actually they communicate those to CIU for further probing. On the prevention part, we've got the fraud prevention policy which was approved by the municipality. We also do continuous reviews of that policy to see if there's a need for it to be amended. And I must indicate that maybe also as part of that, we have the integrity management framework, which was approved, I think, last year in May. In terms of that, there's an integrity management committee that has been established in the municipality. That's part of the proactive initiatives by the municipality to try and deal with the incidents of fraud and corruption, to try and prevent them and see what can be done to deal with the scourge. Obviously, like I've indicated, we do continuous awareness campaigns to various stakeholders, education and training of staff. You'll see on the next slides where actually our officials engage actually with different people. Then actually, obviously, where we engage with various stakeholders, we also do the fraud assessments to identify the fraudulent areas, and so that we can report to relevant authorities and see what can be done to mitigate same. And then ethical assessment as well as a conflict of interest management, where actually we say officials are required to declare their interest and so on. Then on the investigation side, obviously we've got the team that does foreign investigation officer relating to issues of fraud and corruption. We've got the team that does almost services investigating maladministration issues relating to service delivery, and we've got the board, the Financial Misconduct Board, which also deals with these issues from the oversight point of view. On consequence management, we also, the CIU monitors implementation of recommendation of foreign investigations reports. You will see on the first slides. Then also we also report matters to law enforcement agencies for criminal matters. Hence, we have our matters being actually dealt with by the Hawks. As you can see there, this is CIU team at work, actually doing their awareness campaigns, engaging with various stakeholders, obviously talking to them actually about the same issues that I've been talking about, the issues of fraud and corruption, making those awareness campaigns. This type of part of proactive work that we do to engage with different stakeholders actually to do this type of awareness on the regular basis. And also you've got a team of, as you can see up there, there's the CIU team. They were dealing with the issues of human rights. They were engaging with the different stakeholders, and on the below slides, they were networking with the business community, obviously indicating that we need actually cooperation from them as well, businesses, to deal with the sketch. I think on the left there, actually, we were engaged by the, I think it was Ukakasi. We get invited by the radio stations to actually engage, to deal with the stakeholders, sometimes being interviewed and preaching the message. From the, like I've indicated, from the consequence management side, once investigation has been finalized, there's a process of dealing with these processes. These are the matters which are actually have been dealt with on the consequence management sides. Like we have some dismissals. Those are the stats that talk to that. 7 people were dismissed. The number 5 people were given final warnings. 64 people given written warnings. Some officials were cancelled. We have people who were demoted. Obviously, there were people who were found not guilty, and some matters were withdrawn, and so on. We've got 40 officials who resigned. So in total, actually, these are 196 matters have been dealt with through consequence management after the investigation have been finalized. Then also, like I indicated earlier, that also on the criminal side, we do deal with those matters. We have 61 matters being dealt with by the Hawks. Some of those we might have read about actually in the media, and of those actually 21 actually people have been found guilty, and 4 cases were withdrawn, and obviously 29 matters were closed by SAPS for various reasons. Then we say what support is required by foreign investigators and fraud examiners in an attempt to fight fraud and corruption. In his book, Simpson in 2003 argues that there's a serious need for ethical leadership and increasing morality and simply doing the right thing in human affairs. He further says that there's a need for adherence to good governance, oversight, and accountability. Therefore, leadership, we believe, or the board of directors, in the case of companies, have to be at the forefront of driving anti-fraud and anti-corruption programs in organizations. Leadership, we say, should support the development and approval of foreign investigation frameworks and policies. Leadership should support foreign investigation programs by ensuring that foreign investigation departments are adequately resourced with suitably qualified and experienced personnel. Leadership should support and approve sufficient budget for the fraud examination or foreign investigation. Leadership should also send a strong message that all employees and relevant stakeholders should cooperate with foreign investigations to assist in efforts to eradicate fraud and corruption. Leadership will say should declare foreign investigations. Investigators have unlimited access to the company records and personnel to ensure effective and efficient investigation processes. At times, actually, you find that actually investigators get frustrated, not actually being able to, not being given access to the records of the organization, which is very wrong. In fact, criminally, that's called defeating the ends of justice. That's why we say we appeal to leadership that they should actually declare that investigators should be given access to do to information for them to do their work. Thank you very much. I think on that note, I hope that for the next couple of hours we'll have fruitful deliberations and for this very important day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the head of the City Investigations and Integrity Unit, Mr. Mbuso. Thank you very much to the head of the City Investigations and Integrity Unit, Mr. Mbuso Ngobo. Thank you for your presentation, which for me was quite informative, talking about the definition of fraud. Sometimes we don't realize what it actually means. And also taking us through the various forms of corruption, such as political corruption, collusion, price fixing, state capture, and we're currently looking at that now as a country, money laundering, various ways within which people are able to clean dirty money, offshore investments, and also you've taken us through the importance of ethics and integrity within your unit, taking us through points such as ethics, integrity, and as you mentioned, your favorite value being that of ethos, being led by your actual conscience. So where no one has to tell you right or wrong, but you are led by your conscience. So thank you very much for that. I think we can move now to our next speaker, and please, I will encourage all of those who are watching to send through your questions, to send through your comments, to give us feedback on how it's going on this end. If you can hear us properly, if you have comments on any of the presentations that our speakers are about to give you. Our next speaker is Dr. Mpilo Ngubane. Dr. Mpilo Ngubane is the Chief Learning Officer of the Municipal Academy under the auspices of the eThekwini Municipality. He was instrumental in the establishment of the Academy, whose vision is to promote learning and development within and beyond the city. He is a seasoned local government expert, having been a consultant, researcher, a writer, analyst, and facilitator in the local government sector. He has 20 years of local government experience, 8 years of which he served as a municipal manager. He has also worked as the Deputy City Manager of Corporate Services at Umsunduzi Municipality. He is currently the Director of CFAL Durban, a UNITON network center providing capacity building programs and research. He holds 10 qualifications, which include 2 masters, 2 PhD degrees. His forte has been policy development and implementation in the public sector, and he has also done research and presented a number of papers in various national and international conferences. He is currently serving as the Chairman and Research of Professionalization Committee of the Institute of Local Government Management, which is also called the ILGM, and is also serving on its National Institute of Local Government, on its National Executive Committee. He has served in a number of structures, boards, and professional bodies, and is currently a board member of Capacity Building Institute of the United Cities in Local Government Africa, UCLGA. He is also a registered professional executive coach. So welcome, Dr. Mpilo Ngubane, and we are very happy to have you here with us, and we look forward to hearing what your presentation will be about and to getting learnings from you. Thank you. The floor is yours. Dr. Ngubane, can you hear us?
Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you for inviting me into this session. I thank you, Mapoloba, for also asking me to participate in this program. Can I have the presentation shown, please? As it has been said in the introduction, I'm presenting today not as an official of the city of eThekwini, but as the chairperson of the Research and Professionalization Committee of the ILGM. The reason why I am emphasizing that is because as a professional body, we have taken an initiative of ensuring that we try our best to professionalize local government. And one of the things that would help us in professionalizing local government, which has been given to us as a mandate, is to ensure that we root out corruption in local government. And I'm sure all of you will agree with me that almost on weekly basis, we get stories, disturbing stories of corruption in municipalities and local government. And it is a big problem that needs an effort from all of us. So today I'm going to be looking at how do we deal with corruption in local government using professionalization. And I'm sure you are aware that professionalization will always go with ethics, will go with professional integrity, will go with professional knowledge, and all of these are the instruments that can be used to ensure that we root out corruption. If you can go to the second slide, please.
The second slide, please.
The question would be, why professionalization? Why do we want to link the campaign against corruption to professionalization? Firstly, professional people are skilled people, are highly skilled people, which therefore means you spend a number of years acquiring knowledge. And that is why you would have, for example, doctors with PhDs. You will also have professors in various fields. So if you are a professional, you have that wealth of knowledge. So if we encourage people to be knowledgeable, chances are when they get that knowledge, they will have to protect their names, they protect themselves. In the city, for example, we have 29 PhD holders, but none of those, in my knowledge, have been involved in corruption. And the main reason why is because they have a name to protect, because they are learned people, they are knowledgeable people who, because of their knowledge, are aware of the bad name that they would have if ever they were to be found in corrupt activities. But also, we want people who are going to uphold professional integrity. Once you are a professional, you will always have this in your mind that I'm a professional, therefore I must protect my professional integrity. What we want in local government, for example, is what is happening in other professions like doctors, other professions like attorneys, other professions like chartered accountants, where if you have been involved in any unethical conduct, especially corruption, you will be struck off the roll. You will never practice as a doctor again. You will never practice as a chartered accountant again. We also want that we have people who are going to have their professional ethics promoted. And I'm sure we are all aware that all of the professional bodies that we have, especially in the country, they will have their code of ethics and they will have their ethics committees that are dealing with any unethical conduct. So if we professionalize local government, it therefore means most or all, especially our executives, are going to be members of professional bodies, SIGFARO, SAISE, and any other professional body. And in that, we are going to ensure that those members are bound by the professional ethics of their professional bodies. In our case, for example, we deal with, we have an ethics committee. We deal with unethical conduct. I have, for example, quite a number of cases that I'm currently dealing with of our members who are involved in corruption. And I have a direct line with the Hawks, for example, in almost all provinces, because some of these matters are the matters that cannot be finalized by our ethics committee. They have to be referred to the Hawks in various provinces. But also we want professionalization to help us improve performance in general in local government. As you know, that there is an outcry out there, even though that this might not be related to corruption, but it's one of those negative perceptions about local government, that performance is very poor. Next slide, please. Like Umbuso said, I'm not going to be in a position to talk about everything that has to deal with corruption. I'll just highlight a few things. For example, in our view as a professional body, what causes corruption will be the following: greed and excessive lifestyle. Greed, I must indicate this. We have discovered in local government that it's not only politicians who are corrupt. In fact, if you look at the scale, you will find that, in fact, officials are more corrupt than politicians in local government. And there's no other reason that you may find which is motivating this kind of corruption except greed. They just need more money to buy booze, to buy clothes, to buy cars, to buy houses, and all of those things. That kind of excessive lifestyle. I did tell Umbuso, for example, that in my other capacity, I'm responsible for learning and development in the city. There's 1 year where we had a spike of internal employees outside SCM who were doing SCM qualifications. I got very worried because it therefore said to me, there's something that motivates these employees to do SCM-related qualifications. And the only explanation I could provide is that probably they want to move to SCM. And the reason probably is that at SCM, you have a chance of getting rich quicker because you are at SCM. I won't get into the details of that. It's just my perception about that. But we were able to deal with that. We don't have that anymore in the city. Political patronage, that's another cause for corruption. You see, I always say, unfortunately, politicians are very clever as well. I must say, I'm not necessarily talking about our political leadership here at eThekwini. Remember, I'm talking about the whole country, the political landscape in municipalities in the whole country. So what we have discovered is that some politicians create what I normally call planned chaos. Planned chaos means, for example, they appoint municipal managers, CFOs, and even Section 56 employees who do not have the required qualifications, who do not meet all the requirements, just because they want to hold them at ransom, to say, because we appointed you to this position and you know very well that you don't qualify, then you will have to deliver to us. And that's how mostly you will find corruption taking place. That there are people who pay that kind of allegiance, which is called patronage, just because they are returning favor to the politicians. The other problem is or cause is lack of consequence management. What you get here is a situation where, for example, people are involved in corruption, and just because nobody does anything about it, they are not disciplined, and you will find that corruption escalates. And lastly is lack of moral values and moral culture. Like Mapoloba was saying, the ethos part of it, people have just lost on Mbeza, and they know very well that this is not their money. They know that they are stealing money for the poor, and they know that this is the money that is meant for benefiting other people outside there, but that's because they have lost that conscience, the moral conscience. And unfortunately, what you see in the country is a twist where the right becomes wrong and the wrong becomes right. And that kind of immoral compass that we find in the whole country is going to be a problem because it defeats the moral fiber of our society. You see people who don't just understand that corruption is a crime against humanity. They see it as part of a package. If you are working for a municipality, they will think that billion rand budget of the city also belongs to you as the employee of the city. Next slide, please. There are certain things that are compromising ethics in our municipalities. Nepotism is one of those. I said earlier on that people who do not qualify are appointed deliberately into these positions, powerful positions, just because we want to manipulate them. And also there is lack of exemplary ethical leadership. You see, one main solution to corruption is ethical leadership. That is exemplary. You will see that in many organizations where the municipal manager or a city manager is clean, I'm talking about completely clean, chances are people reporting to him are going to be clean. And I'm talking about a municipal manager who is able to deal with anything that is wrong without any fear or favor. So that exemplary leadership is infectious, if I may say, because it goes down the levels, because they know the big boss will not tolerate any nonsense, and people are not going to do any nonsense. The other one that compromises the whole thing is looking away from unethical conduct. We see these things happening right in front of us, but we decide to look away. Remember, if you look away, you are an accomplice to the crime as well. Corruption happens right in front of you, but you don't report it. Next slide, please. But then the question is, what are the solutions? And again here, we are not intending to exhaust all the solutions. These are just examples of what we need to do to be able to deal with it. I have already spoken about professionalizing local government, and our core is the fact that once people belong to professional bodies, they will be regulated and bound by the code of ethics and professional integrity that they will have to uphold. And chances are less likely to be involved on corrupt activities. But also we want to have highly effective institutional structures. Institutional structures, like in the case of the city, we have the ethics committee, we have MPEC, we also have city integrity, which is doing a very good job. But like Umbuso was saying, these structures must have teeth. They should be able to bite. They should not be just stooges there and be manipulated by the system. They should be given resources to be able to do their work. And also, the regulatory environment must be highly effective. Imagine a situation where city integrity will be able to find people, culprits, but our disciplinary regulatory environment is not supportive of them rooting out corruption. You have people, for example, who have stayed at home for more than 4 years on issues of corruption. And that matter is not resolved because maybe they are certain things that would come out if those people are fired, as an example. So that defeats the purpose, because it means the regulatory environment is not talking to the institutional environment, which is dealing with corruption. Those two will have to be interrelated and talk to each other and be equally effective. Awareness and education, and again here, is something that has to be done by every public servant. I know I'm one of the victims here. I've spoken a lot about corruption, and in fact, I even think I talk too much about corruption. And there are people who are not talking to me just because I talk about corruption. People who don't like me because of that. But if we don't talk about it, nobody will know about it, and it will go unnoticed. The other one is rewarding ethical conduct. We have people who are, like I was saying, we have a group of PhD holders, and we talk to them almost on monthly basis about how they should conduct themselves, because we don't want to hear that a PhD holder has been involved in corruption. So, in other words, you do have these pockets of excellence happening in different organizations. But because we are bogged down by the perception, the negative perception that comes with corruption, we don't even think of incentivizing the anti-corruption practices that are happening in a number of organizations. And that alone can help in terms of ensuring that we are able to promote ethical conduct in institutions. Living by example. That is another very important part. I'm not claiming to be a holy cow or innocent, but where I work, the team will know that I can try my best and do whatever corruption I do, but at the end of the day, I know that my boss will not take it friendly or will not like it once he hears that I'm involved in corruption. I say that upfront, and I live that. I will never be in a situation where I have to force the employee to do something that is corrupt just because I got an instruction politically that I must deliver this. So, in other words, if you leave it, if you're an exemplar, if you are exemplary to your staff, chances are it's going to be reduced, because they know that once it comes out, they don't have a chance of survival. But if you, as the leader of that particular team, is the first one to be involved in corruption, I can bet you the whole unit is going to be corrupt. So it's important that it should always begin with us, especially those who are given these leadership roles in our respective organizations. And lastly, we just have to deal with corruption without any fear or favor. Irrespective of who does it, irrespective of where it is happening, even if it is your son, if it is your parent, the rule book is the same. And that is how we are going to deal with corruption. Thank you very much, Program Director. I know I had 15 minutes allocated to me. I might have exceeded by 1 or 2 minutes. Like I said, we appreciate the fact that you were able to give us this opportunity, and I'm sure that if we have a lot of these kinds of platforms where we just talk about it, this war is going to be over someday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mpilo, for your very informative talk. And I think, unlike usual, you managed to give us some solutions. And I think from the solutions that you were talking about, it would appear to be that the scourge of corruption, should I say, appears to be a very psychological one, and one which impacts by people on people's behavior, and one as well which is affected by our different values and our value systems. And just to run through some of the solutions that you provided would be the professionalization of the local government, having highly effective institutional structures, an effective regulatory system, awareness and education, which we've seen the CII unit do quite a lot of that, going into public spaces and providing those campaigns that talk about corruption, that actually assist people to know what it actually is, because in many cases you find that ignorance also plays a role. And then also the factor of rewarding ethical conduct, leading by example, promoting ethical culture, and also just leading with no fear or favor. So thank you so much for that, and I hope that we're all going to have good takeaways from that. And we have quite a few people that have joined us via our social media platforms, such as Facebook, where we're doing live streaming, as well as those who have joined us from their own private spaces, in their boardrooms, in their offices, in your homes. Welcome to you as well, and thank you so much for joining us this morning to have a very, very important and imperative discussion around fraud and corruption, especially where we are as a country right now. So we're very thankful to the eThekwini municipality and of course our partners here today from the ACFE. I'd like to welcome with us Mr. Len Kutia. Welcome, Len. You're on, good to have you. I'll give everybody a brief update in bio. Can please just mute the microphone for now while I read your colorful bio. Len Kutia started his career in SAPS, South African Police Services, in 1986, culminating in him being a captain in the commercial crime unit for 10 years, where he specialized in white-collar fraud and syndicated crime investigations totaling billions of rand. He worked in the US, in the United States Secret Services Department, as well as with ex-US Vice President Al Gore's administration. He received training in counterfeit foreign currency with the SA Reserve Bank, as well as the US Secret Service. Len has traveled extensively internationally and also collaborated with the Scotland Yard on Crown Court cases, the Independent Commission Against Corruption Hong Kong, as well as the FBI on multi-billion rand investigations. So Len is our go-to guy for investigations and for crime and for awareness in South Africa, not only having worked in our country, but also in many well-established international organizations. He started his insurance career in 1995 with Auto and General Insurance, setting up the internal motor and non-motor investigations department. From 1998 to 2003, he was self-employed and held various directorships in companies servicing corporate and private companies, as well as short-term industry investigating fraud, preventing fraud payout of claims totaling hundreds of millions, which he managed to save the firm. From 2003 to 2010, Len was employed in management at Outsurance and First Rand STI as regional and coastal manager claims, assessing and operations, and later as an executive director of Outsurance in Namibia. Len then formed Sensio Pty Ltd as an executive director and one of the founding members to later become Extend. Len then left Extend to form his own company. He is currently the co-founder and joint managing director of Access Ltd, Assessing and Forensic Investigation Services, specializing in insurance claim investigations as well as forensic investigations on a national basis. Len is an internationally qualified as a certified fraud examiner since 2011 with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in Austin, Texas. He is also the chairman of the ACFE in KZN and is also the National Board of Directors of the ACFE in South Africa. He was recently nominated and elected as the Vice President of the ACFE in South Africa. So congratulations on your new appointment, Len. Len is also an international Taekwondo black belt instructor. Len has 2 children, his son Dylan, holding a BCom degree in risk management, being a forensic claims examiner at one of South Africa's leading insurance, and his daughter, Dr. Roxanne, having her own medical practice treating patients in bioflex laser technology and chiropractic. Welcome home, Len. We hear that Durban actually is your home, so welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Program Director. Just want to say good morning to everybody. I want to welcome all the eThekwini delegates. I also want to welcome all the affiliates and associates of the ACFE South Africa, all their members, as well as the certified fraud examiners that are attending today's session. We're actually very honored and privileged again to have a partnership with eThekwini Municipality and specifically with the City Integrity and Investigations Unit, which we have had a relationship for several years. Unfortunately, the traditional session could not be conducted this year due to the pandemic that we've had globally, but we've managed to be very innovative. Humans, unlike animals, we are quite resilient as well, and we've come up with pretty good systems on how to continue with our seminars and our processes, and this is why we're doing this via webinar system this year. But we must not fool ourselves, because the criminals, the fraudsters, the corrupt individuals, dishonest individuals are just as resilient and just as innovative. And we cannot allow complacency to set in. We've seen a whole new aspect of fraud being committed and escalating to some high levels during this pandemic period. I just want to go into some details on the ACFE. Our presentation will result a bit about the fraud awareness, which is international. The International Fraud Awareness Week is highlighted throughout November, and we also then go through some details regarding the Certified Fraud Examiner qualifications, what the ACFE does in South Africa. I'm going to share some stats quickly with you on the State of the Nations. It's a global report that's done by ACFE International, which might give you some insight as to how criminals and fraudsters and perpetrators are still continuing and escalating with their corrupt activities around the world. Next. Right, so I'll outline a bit International Fraud Awareness Week, about the ACFE SA and also CFEs as professionals. Next slide. Okay, the series of our global fraud problem is one of the reasons why the ACFE started the International Fraud Awareness Week, to promote anti-fraud awareness and education. The initiative, known commonly as Fraud Week, champions the need to proactively fight fraud and help safeguard businesses against fraud losses. I'm going to discuss a little bit about occupational fraud, which is a major concern specific in South Africa. The State of the Nations reflected, yes, South Africa is #1 in sub-Saharan Africa for occupational fraud. And many of us may have doubted that, but we are #1 with the most cases reported here. Second, Kenya, and third will be Nigeria. There's a whole long list, but I'll give us the top 3, with us being #1. During the Fraud Week, obviously, we want all our official supporters to engage in various activities, including hosting of fraud awareness training, and we conduct employee surveys, and we assess levels of fraud awareness in the organization. We've actually created an acronym here. Why is Fraud Awareness Week so important? So you can see this ACFE, innovative again from us as fraud professionals. Awareness of self, others, industry, economy, country, and globally. Connect with fellow fraud fighters, collaboration with others. Freshen up your skills. We always have to enhance our skills and upskill ourselves, your perspective, your networks, your tools, and then obviously energize. It's a very taxing and a straining job for fraud fighters. So you energize yourself, you also need to take some time out. A bit about the ACFE again, for those that aren't fully aware. The ACFE is the world's largest anti-fraud organization and premier provider of fraud training and education. And together with more than 85,000 members worldwide, the ACFE is reducing business fraud and inspiring public confidence in the integrity and objectivity within the profession. Worldwide, the ACFE has 195 chapters representing 76 countries. The mission of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners is to reduce the incidence of fraud and white-collar crime and to assist the membership in fraud detection and deterrence. ACFE South Africa, which is Chapter 91, is recognized South Africa's professional body We represent the governing and the fraud examination professionals in South Africa, and we're governed by the South African National Qualifications Framework Act and the ACFE chapter bylaws. Chapter participation gives you the opportunity to meet other anti-fraud professionals, and you can network with everybody, obviously discuss new crime trends and become more aware of what's happening in your community and in our country. The fraud, we mustn't fool ourselves again. The fraudster's greatest liability is the certainty that fraud is too clever to be detected. So they also become complacent, but they come up with very innovative and ingenious ways of committing fraud in organizations and on cyber and digital domains as we go along. CFEs as professionals, certified fraud examiner is a leader in the anti-fraud community and is regarded as an expert in preventing, detecting and deterring fraud. Certified fraud examiners come from a variety of professions, including accounting, internal auditing, legal, consulting, law enforcement, security, and loss prevention. And they actively fight fraud in the industry. CFEs represent the highest standards held by the ACFE and possess expertise in all aspects of anti-fraud professions. We've highlighted in South Africa, especially and worldwide, that is a very scarce skill. The fraud examiner and certified fraud examiner occupation is now recognized very scarcely and a priority still by both insurance CETA and the safety and security CETA in South Africa. The requirements to become a CFE. Pursuing a CFE credential is not just something you can go and sit and write an exam. It is a very stringent exam, and it's governed by the ACF International in Austin, in Texas. It requires solid commitment, existing knowledge, experience, and the will to succeed. The standards of the certification are set by the ACFE Board of Regents. CFEs must demonstrate professional skills in all areas of fraud prevention and detection. To become a CFE, you need to meet the following minimum requirements. Bachelor's degree from an accredited institution, or you've got to have at least 2 or more years of professional experience in a field related to fraud prevention and detection, and also the successful completion of the CFE examination. Advantage of becoming a certified fraud examiner. Obtaining the CFE credential immediately sells you apart from the competition and boosts you to the top of your profession. Worldwide, they've done a study that CFEs earn 30% more on average on the remuneration compared to the colleagues in the industry. Fraud examiners have a unique set of skills absent from any other discipline. They combine knowledge of complex financial transactions with an understanding of investigation, law, and how to resolve allegations of fraud. Not only are they trained to understand fraud and how it occurs, but also the reason behind it. So I'm going to play a little clip here for you on the Report of the Nations to give you an idea on the 2020 global study on occupational fraud and abuse. As you saw from the clip, and as the previous speaker, Mbuso Ngobo, who's the head of the CIU at eThekwini Municipality, alluded to the fact on the fraud triangle, which plays an integral role in how we analyze people who commit fraud. Why report of the nations? Just unpacking reports, assessing the total loss of fraud internationally, statistical findings, how does Africa compare to the rest of the world, which I shared with you, South Africa specifically in sub-Saharan Africa being #1 for occupational fraud, the future of fighting fraud, and then we can go into some questions after that if you want. Okay, the annual report of the nations is all for anti-fraud professionals, business managers, government, regulatory agencies, and the media. Each have a vested interest in assessing the total amount of money lost to fraud each year. Many studies have attempted to determine the extent of fraud's financial impact. The challenges in arriving at the total cost are quite complex and numerous. It is impossible to know exactly how much fraud goes undetected or unreported. Attempts to determine the cost of fraud is very important. Understanding the size of the problem helps bring attention to that impact and enables organizations to quantify their fraud risk and helps management make educated decisions about investing in anti-fraud resources and programs on an annual basis. You can just look at the statistics there, sub-Saharan Africa. It's important to note there, and I know Mbuso mentioned also previously about the tip-off line, the hotline, the whistleblowers line, you call it whichever may you what, but occupational fraud is initially detected over 40% there on tip-offs. So it's a vital cog and an instrument and a tool in any organization to have that in place, because it identifies and also points out where there's possible occupational fraud in any organization. On the report of the nations, you'll have a look there again. You can see on the percentages of the various types of fraud that takes place. I mean, creating fraudulent physical documents, 40%. Mbuso again also spoke about that earlier. You look in certain fraud risks, most likely in small businesses than in large organizations. And funny enough, you'll find that with regards to, they call it billing fraud in America, we call it invoicing. On payroll, we spoke about the ghost employees that Mbuso alluded to earlier. And then we also check it payment tampering. You can look at the tip-off line. Over 33% of CFE say they got information from tip-off lines to assist them with investigations. Strangely enough, the management level seems to be the highest level where fraud is committed. It's not so much on the general workers, and obviously it's easier for them to cover up fraud. I'm just going to allow you to have a look at the slide there, but I'm not going to go into every bit of detail. It gives you some information of where it all lies, from small to medium organizations to large companies and how they compare to each other. So obviously lack of internal controls is in small companies, and basically we have overriding of internal vital controls in larger organizations. You can look at the medium there in terms of what value and quantums they apply when it comes to fraud being committed. And strangely enough, 72% of the fraudsters are men again. So the ladies are not as dishonest and corrupt as the men. And we have just over 20% of the ladies there involved. And if you look at the medium, the men are almost double in terms of the amount of fraud that they commit. And we $150,000 times by 15 that we have today. Gives you an idea, it's almost 2 million rand per incident. And the ladies are a bit less than just under 1 million rand. It's not too bad. But yes, scary. Punishment again, even on executive level, if you look on the right top there, there is punishment meted out to 80%, but in larger organizations, it goes unattended and sometimes gets swept under the mat, which is something that needs to be addressed, dealt with. And this is where we as fraud examiners and global crime fighters come into play in ensuring that we get accurate evidence when we investigate the matters and make sure that it's followed through right to the end for criminal conviction and trials. So basically, we've got to change the culture, the way people think, not just in our industry, but everybody in our nation. In most of the cultures, we are taught not to tattletale. We are taught that impimpi is being bad. In impimpi, I mean, you're scandalized and you're targeted and victimized. And we've seen this even with some of the incidents with our state-owned enterprises and some private organizations in the last 2 years, where people have highlighted and given information through on whistleblower lines and been targeted as impimpis and tattletales. And then they say they work for the enemy. So we have to change our mindset and the way we think about this. Impimpi is also not accepted in society. People who talk out about others that are doing wrong. And this definitely has to change, and we have to speak out. You cannot remain silent when you come across incidents of this nature. You can see that little quote at the bottom there. I want that to sink in so you can understand why it is important for those that keep quiet and don't report irregularities and fraud and the impact it has on any organization or on a country. If you need to contact us, there's some details of the ACFE offices in Pretoria, our head office. We've also got a fraud hotline that you call us on. There's also the ACFE sa@beheard.co.za email address, all anonymous. You call through there. Our member services, join the ACFE South Africa. These are the details, the email address and telephone number of the ACFE South Africa to join us. You can also go onto our website, which gives you a wealth of information, the www.acfesa.co.za. Or you can go international on the acfe.com, and you'll learn a lot from it as well, and just end up skilling yourself on what's happening around the world and in South Africa alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Len. Len Kusia is the chairman of the ACFE in KZN, and he's also an executive director and founder of Access Pty Ltd, which is an assessing and forensic investigation services company. Thank you very much. We will be taking a short comfort break, and as we go to this break, I'd just like to share with you a quote that I found online, which says, "Fraud really thrives in moments of great social change and transition. We're in the midst of a technological revolution that gives con artists huge opportunities. People lose their frame of reference for what can and can't be real. And during these times of great social change and transition, with the way technology has been and the improvements we're seeing there, I guess the face of fraud and corruption is changing already." We will be taking a short comfort break, and we'll be back at 11:30 to hear Mr. Brian Adams, not the singer, but the one that is known as the ethics architect. He is passionate about assisting clients to build ethical businesses and defeat the concerted attack of workplace crime. He achieves this through his innovative reporting service called Be Heard. So we'll hear more about Brian Adams after our comfort break. We'll be back at 11:30. Thank you very much.
Ooh, yeah.
say those are the kind of people that we want to follow. I'd also at the top of the organization.
Workshops, and Brian was and then Command and Staff course. He's a certified ethics officer and a pioneer with Mr. Brian Adams, as I promised you before our comfort break. Brian was born in Cape Town and was schooled at Rondebosch Primary School and high schools. He has a BCom degree from the University of Stellenbosch and is a graduate of the South African Army Command and Staff course. He is a certified ethics officer and a pioneer member of the Ethics Practitioners Association and started anonymous reporting services in South Africa in 2000. He's known as the ethics architect and is passionate about assisting clients to build ethical businesses and defeat the concerted attack of workplace crime. He achieves this through his innovative reporting service called Be Heard and through his unique ethics surveys, consulting, and training. Because new businesses are like sea turtles, only about 5% of them survive. He is passionate to see more companies succeed and grow to maturity and become sustainable and profitable. Brian has been running his own businesses since the mid-1990s, 1996 to be exact, and he has written a very popular book, Of Course You Can, which aims to share the lessons that he has learned on his own, sometimes very bumpy journey. He also conducts a range of workshops to assist entrepreneurs. He speaks regularly at conferences, workshops, and at academic institutions. Brian is married to Jackie and has 2 adult daughters and grandchildren, and he calls Durban home. Welcome, Brian. We look forward to hearing what you have to tell us this afternoon.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. I'm also delighted to be here today. And I'm just going to, in the short amount of time that I have, try and touch on some of the most important things that concern us regarding ethics and our ethics journey and our roles individually to contribute to building an ethical society. We've all gone through. Can we just? Why is there an echo here? Okay, sorry about that. We all have been through COVID and the impact of COVID, and it's clear to us all that the world as we know it is never really going to be the same again. But what I would like to underline is the fact that the cornerstones and the foundations, which is our ethical structure, which is our ethical underpinning, is definitely going to not change. We have to keep on building this changed world post-COVID on the same good ethical foundations that we had before. Next. 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 Okay, so what I would really like to underline, and we've heard a couple of definitions of ethics, is that ethics is not a department or a project undertaken by some external consultant. You won't believe it, but I still get, when I go and see prospective clients or even my own clients, they ask me whether I can do ethics for them. And that's not something that one does for somebody. It's something which is a set of beliefs that are woven into the fabric of your organization, and they have to be embraced by everybody from the top, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on, to the very bottom. So it's got to be embraced by everybody in the organization that feel that they are part of the whole thing. So when I talk about ethics in relation to you and your organization, I'm actually talking about your lifeblood. I'm not talking about a department, I'm not talking about a committee, I'm not talking about policies and procedures, I'm talking about something which is absolutely intrinsic to your organization. Change? So ethics speaks to your DNA, it speaks to your identity, it speaks to your brand, it speaks to your reputation, and it speaks to your sustainability. One merely just has to look at the corporate collapses of the likes of Steinhoff, Tongaat Hewlett, KPMG, to understand what an ethical collapse can do to the sustainability and the reputation of a specific brand. So ethics must begin at the top of an organization. It is a leadership issue, and the chief executive must set an example. Both the speakers that spoke before me talked about this. Ethics is a leadership issue. It's got to start at the top of the organization. So when we talk about leadership, I just want to revert to what I said earlier. It's not something that you can do for anybody else. And why I've got that picture up there is because it's like showering. Showering is not something you can do for somebody else. You can possibly pass them the shampoo. You can even hold a towel over to them when they get out of the shower, but you can't shower on their behalf. They've got to do it themselves. So it's all about ownership. It's all about leadership. It's all about those good things. And when we speak about leadership, we're talking about somebody like that lioness, because that lioness is not sitting in a corner office overlooking a golf course or in Sandton somewhere with the beautiful secretary and all the other trappings and trimmings of leadership. She's actually out there on the ground, setting an example in the danger zone. You can see how close she is to the buffalo's horns. And those are the kind of leaders that we are crying out for in the world. Not only in South Africa, not only in Durban, but everywhere in the world. We're looking at passionate, brave, courageous leaders that are setting an example. You'll hear that word or that phrase more from me later on. Setting an example is what leadership is all about in organizations. And here's an example of one of the world's leaders. He looks like quite a humble sort of guy, isn't he? And I must just quote an article that appeared in a Kenyan newspaper about this guy, because you're not going to believe it when you think about some of the other leaders we have in the world. And I'm going to read it quickly. When African heads of state were being chauffeured in huge convoys and spending nights in luxurious hotels in New York during the United Nations General Assembly, the president of the Swiss Confederation, that guy that was sitting there, is the president of Switzerland. He was cooking his own meals and sharing a room in a small apartment he rented for his delegation of 5 people. Every morning he would walk to the UN headquarters. This is him working on the files on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Isn't that a cool kind of example that we should be following? It's not somebody that drives around like a lot of world leaders do with a convoy of 20 cars with blue lights on. These are the kind of humble servant leaders that we look up to, and we say those are the kind of people that we want to follow. I'd also like to just at an early stage just make it clear that we understand the difference between compliance and ethics. Compliance, and we all know we have compliance departments, we have policies, procedures, we have committees that review our compliance to make sure that we're adhering to policies and procedures. But compliance essentially is behavior in accordance with somebody else's requirements. So you do it to gain rewards, to get a bonus, or if you don't do it, you're going to be punished. So unfortunately, there's a confusion about this, because when people act ethically, they are self-governed. So being compliant is something you do to avoid punishment and to hope for reward. And as Einstein says, if people are only good because they fear punishment and hope for a reward, then we are a sorry lot indeed. So compliance is doing what we're required to do by law or by policies, while ethics is about doing what you should do. And one of our great South Africans said, for a society to operate properly, every person should be their own policeman. That's the point of ethics, and that's where ethics begins. So we have to regulate ourselves. We have to set our own example, and we all have to be leaders in our own specific environment. That is principally what it's all about. So who's doing the wrong stuff? Who's guilty? And the bottom line is that we all are, to a greater or less extent. None of us are clean. None of us can throw the first stone. So do you buy stolen goods? Do you buy pirate DVDs and CDs? Do you buy fake clothing from the side of the road? Do you pay your TV license? Do you pay your e-tolls? Do you pay your popgeld, which is, I'm surprised some people don't understand what that is, but it's maintenance. And do you involve pirate electricity in your area? These are all indicators of all the things that we're doing without even thinking about it. People that copy other people's work at university, people that copy other people's work while they're doing degrees and advanced degrees. These are all indicators of a bad ethical climate. You see, ethics is personal. It's personal. It's about each one of us. It's about something, as I mentioned earlier, it's something that's in your DNA. But ethics is also relational. And that's where this beautiful quotation, it's called the Golden Rule, comes in. Because ethics is all about mutual respect, and it's all about consideration. And most of the 12 major religions, I didn't even know there were so many, but there are. Most of the 12 major religions have this as a golden rule, and that is to treat others as you would like to be treated. Can you imagine if we in South Africa woke up every morning, looked in the mirror and decided that today I'm going to treat everybody I meet as I would like them to treat me? The whole world would turn upside down, wouldn't it? It would be a completely different place. If we were kind, if we respected each other, if we didn't take stuff that didn't belong to us, if we didn't disparage other people or abuse them, the whole world would change and would become a much better place. So I've developed a little thing called my ethics potjie, because we all know what potjies are. And the beautiful thing about a potjie is that if one of the legs are missing on the potjie is going to fall over and our stew is going to be spoiled. So for an ethical environment to be built, we have to have all three legs standing firmly on the ground. And the first one is self, which is at the bottom, as you can see. Doesn't matter where it is, but it's one of the three. We have to get ourselves sorted out. We have to make sure that our own behavior is appropriate, and we have to make sure that we are leading our own lives and wherever we are in our own community or in our family, wherever we are. And we have to relate to our organization, because we all involve ourselves somehow or other with an organization, and with our family, and with the company we work, and with the religious organization that we belong to, and sports groups that we might belong to. And then there's other, and that is the rest of the world, the rest of the community, the greater community, people that we don't necessarily relate to directly, but people that we definitely influence. You see, that's what ethics is all about. It's about the relationship between self, our immediate environment, and all the others that surround us. You see, it starts with me. In this little diagram that I put together, ethics starts with me in the center. It's all about me. And you will see the arrow coming in from the one side, which is all the impacts that hit us from the world, from our country, from organizations and communities. The other arrow that goes out to the right-hand side is how I influence the people around me, our country, and the world. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit later and show you that it is really not important how big we are and how important we are. Each one of us has to impact on the world in our own specific way. The next thing I'd like to touch on is that ethics is about choices. It's about nothing else. It's about choices. We all, except some of us that unfortunately don't have that facility, most of us can see, most of us can hear, most of us can touch, smell, and taste. But we also have the sixth sense. And that's where forensic investigators have this inborn ability to smell out something which may or may not appear on the surface to be exactly what it is. But whatever stimulus you may encourage, you have to make a choice after that. So you see something, as a result of seeing something, you make a choice. How am I going to respond? What is my response going to be? Am I going to say yes, or am I going to say no? You see, ethics is not about a buffet or an a la carte, where you can decide, I'm going to have a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. Ethics is about deciding that you're going to be taking the right decision every time, not just when you don't feel like having chicken, you're not going to take that decision. And that can really be best illustrated by this picture of the silos from the Free State. Now, a lot of organizations operate in silos, and I normally have a slide, and I think I do have it later on, where people believe that because they're in the purchasing department, they've got nothing to do with sales. And the salespeople believe because they're in the sales department, they've got nothing to do with accounting. You see, we've got to get rid of these silos. We've got to say to ourselves that we don't operate as an ethical person at home, but it's at work we steal. Or we operate ethically at work, but at home we beat up our spouses. So you see, it's all about consistency. And even though I might go over my time slightly, I must tell you this little story about this couple that go to a fast food outlet and they get their brown paper bag full of food, they get in their car and off they go. When they get home, they discover that they haven't got a bag full of fast food, they've actually got a bag full of cash. And what they realize immediately is that the poor manager of the fast food confused the bag. He gave the bag with his banking money to them, and he kept their food on the counter. So being good, honest, hardworking people, they get back into their car, off they go back to the restaurant, and they say to the manager, sure, here's your money. Please give us our food back or make us some hot food and we'll be on our way. And the manager says, geez, I'm absolutely blown away. You guys are so honest, so ethical. I'd like to take a photo of you two and we'd like to put it on our website. We'd like to put it into our newsletter. We'd like to put it on Facebook to tell everybody what a great couple you are. So they lean over and they say to him, listen, please don't do that because we're both married, but we're not married to each other. So we wouldn't actually like that photograph to be all over social media. You see, that's what consistency is all about. And I hear laughter from my colleagues here around me because it's actually a bit of a joke. Because we all behave like that to a greater or less extent, don't we? There are things in our lives where we're very strong and ethical and upright and upstanding, but in other parts of our lives, we actually don't do so well. You see, ethics is about making the right choices, even under adverse conditions. Ethical behavior can have a cost. And this is another point where I'm sure some of you are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Your girlfriend or your spouse or whatever comes into the room and she says to you, darling, do these jeans make my backside look big? Now, as a man, you are confronted with the decision you have to make. You know that if you make the wrong decision or you actually tell it honestly or speak out actually what you are seeing, you could end up with a sulking girlfriend or a sulking wife for the next couple of days. So aren't we all faced with that kind of decision sometimes, where we're faced with a situation that we have to make a call. Are we going to go to the left or are we going to go to the right? Are we going to say it as it is or are we going to pretend that we haven't seen it? So there is a cost. Sometimes if you take the right decision and you stand up, you will maybe lose your job. You will maybe not be promoted because the manager won't like you for being honest. So there's always a cost to an ethical decision. Whether we like it or not, there's always a cost. This thing's not working now. For some reason.
It is. It is.
Is it working now?
Yeah.
Sorry, we're just trying to get our slides moved. Because I'm still seeing the jeans. Oh, here we go.
Are you able to see on your side?
I'm not seeing any slides now. Sorry about this, guys. We'll be back with you in a sec.
Can you unmute me, please? I think maybe.
Oh, here comes the master. Maybe he can sort it out. We've lost the slides.
Brian, I think while we wait for your slides to show up, I've come across a very interesting quotation that actually talks about ethics and what it requires from the person. It says, ethical decisions ensure that everyone's best interests are protected. When in doubt, don't. Is that what you would advise? When in doubt, rather not do anything.
Absolutely. I'm going to touch on that in a moment.
Okay.
But what you say is absolutely critical because it touches on what I said earlier about consideration. What you say is
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What you were saying earlier, all about consideration. It's all about considering the other people you may be acting with or involved with. And
Right.
I'm going to touch on that other point in a second.
And also that you can't put someone else in charge of morals. It's a
Yeah.
very personal decision.
Exactly. That's where the showering came. You know, it's you don't call somebody up and say, come and shower for me. It's something you've got to do yourself. And you know, believe it or not, I find very often when I speak to senior people in all types of organizations, public and private sector, they think that ethics is something they can just create a department, they can find a qualified person, they can write a policy, and then they can hand it over to them and say, get on with it and carry on doing it.
And I think maybe just before we continue with your presentation.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Okay.
If we're looking in terms of what's happening in the world at the moment, looking at the US elections and looking at the moral and the ethical situation that they face, with a president that doesn't want to leave office and the new president-elect, what do you say about that moral compass of that country? Just your personal viewpoints.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very controversial one at the moment. But I think that all around the world, we're confronted with that kind of problem, where people that should be setting an example are not. And often you look at world leaders across the spectrum and you ask yourself the question, if I look at that person and their lifestyle, is that something that I'd want to emulate? And quite honestly, I'm not going to mention any names here, but quite obviously, if one looks around the world at the people that are leading the countries on the globe, there are not a lot of people that we can honestly clap hands for. The one example is the ex-president of Croatia. She was a fantastic lady, and she's just finished her second term. And in the last Soccer World Cup, her team did pretty well. And she actually went to all the games that they were involved in. But she flew economy class. She took leave. She actually put in a leave. She paid for the tickets herself. And when she got to the stadium, she didn't sit with all the other VIPs and all the other celebrities. She actually sat with her fellow countrymen and women in the stands with all the other supporters. Now, isn't that a kind of example, another example of the kind of leader that we should be looking up to? She was absolutely straight and honest about her leave and about all those other good things.
Absolutely. It shows you the character of a person. Are you ready to continue?
Are you? No, I haven't got a slide.
I think at this point, Brian, if you're ready to continue with your notes, let's continue. The presentations will be available on this website, www.acfesa.co.za. So that's where you'll find today's presentation, www.acfesa.co.za. And Brian, please continue. We will upload the presentation for all to see.
I think we are getting there now, are we? Yeah. Yeah, we're getting there now. 1 second, and I'll be at the right slide. Thank you. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Okay, there's another fantastic leader in my experience and my studies. Her name's Sally Krawcheck, and it's worthwhile actually Googling her to find out a bit about her life story. She was a whistleblower in the financial sector in the US, and she said something quite important, that when it comes down to your ethics versus a job, choose ethics, you can always get another job. Somebody else said, you're not a tree, you can move. And what's really cool about this is, and it's not really appropriate everywhere, because sometimes you have a job and you're so reliant on that job for actually staying alive that there must be another way of dealing with it rather than just resigning. But what she's really saying is that there's sometimes a really serious price to pay if you want to stay ethical and live according to your ethical standards. You see, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. And I put the golf ball there just so that all the golfers out there can understand and know what I'm talking about. It's when your ball's in a very difficult place, your choice is to play it where it lies or to give it a little help and kick it from where it is into a better shot, a better position to play your shot. So this is when we get down to where the rubber meets the road. When you're on your own at home and you've got to make a decision about how you're behaving, this is where integrity comes in. I always wondered why somebody didn't do something about that. Then I realized I'm that somebody. And that's the question that you asked a moment ago. It's actually about each and every one of us. It's an individual decision. You see, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change the toilet roll. Don't you find that in your life? I find it at home and at our little office, where people who use the last water in the kettle don't fill the kettle. Or some people, it's below their dignity to take the garbage out. You know, you get all these kind of things where people are not being considerate of other people. So we're going back to the golden rule, going back to the whole point about ethics not being something you do on your own, something you do in relation to other people. As somebody taught me years and years ago, when you point your finger at somebody, there are always three fingers pointing back at you. So let's point fingers, let's stand for ethics, but let's make absolutely sure that when we point fingers at somebody, that we take care of those three fingers that are pointing back at us. I always remember when I fly on planes, when they read out the safety instructions, and it says that when your masks drop down from the hatch above you, make sure you put your own mask on first before you worry about other people. And that's my view of ethics. Let's get our own life sorted out first before we worry about other people or start pointing fingers at our nearest politician or whatever the case may be. So if you don't want anybody to know about what you've been up to, don't do it. And I've come up with a thing which I call the Goggle Test, which is if my Goggle knew about what I was doing or what I was about to do, would she be happy or wouldn't she be happy? Isn't that a cool test? It's a granny test, if you like. It's something that you're about to do or have done, and you say to yourself, should I do it or shouldn't I do it? Would my Goggle be happy if she knew that I was doing that? The other version of that is the billboard test. If you are doing something or have done something or thinking about doing something, would you like that to be on a billboard between Durban and Pietermaritzburg or between Johannesburg and Pretoria so that everybody could see? That's a good test, because most of us would say, no, no, no. If it's going to be on the billboard, then I'd rather not do it. And here we have the apex, which is Devi. Would you like Devi to run into your office with her microphone and her camera crew behind her, and you be on carte blanche next Sunday? So use those three little tests when you have to take a decision which you're wavering about, and use those three tests to determine whether you're going to do it or not. So coming to the end, how do we respond? You hear something, you see something, you have choices. You have a response to make. And in South Africa, we have this pathetic response, which is to ignore. I said to somebody the other day that I'm going to write to the president and suggest that we replace the blue crane as our national bird with the ostrich, because it's so widespread that we all go to sleep at night and we hope that by some divine intervention, when we wake up tomorrow morning, things are just going to be miraculously different. We have to understand that we cannot ignore stuff. We have to deal with it face on, head on, and we have to make sure that we are part of the solution. The other option, the other choice, the other response is that you run away. You go to another country, you go to another town, or you leave the company that you work in. It doesn't always work because you're not dealing with the issue, you're not confronting the issue is not being dealt with. The other one is this one, which I touched on earlier, which is the silo mentality. You see, that guy that was painting the lines, he is a line painter. He's not a branch clearer. And, you know, it might cause a little bit of a chuckle here and there, but it's actually quite tragic, because if you look at your own lives, you find out that we all have this kind of silo mentality where we only do stuff because that's our principal job. It's not my job to report crime, fraud, and corruption. It's the forensic department, or it's Musi's department, or it's the internal auditor's problem. It's not my problem. So we can't continue to avoid stuff, ladies and gentlemen. We have to take it on, tackle it head on. So the route I'm suggesting for all of us is the fight route. It's not a question of avoiding. It's not a question of running away. It's a question of standing and fighting. So if you see something or hear something, you have to please say something. We have to be bold. We have to stand up, and we have to start becoming ethics warriors and ethics activists, because that's what's expected of us. You see, I believe that we're about 2 minutes or 3 minutes to 12. I believe that we're so close to the tipping point. I'm so delighted that the NPA is starting to prosecute some big fish, that people on the ground, you and me, who are getting really tired of all this fraud and corruption, can start seeing that there are people that are actually starting to go to court. We are still a long way from where we should be, but there certainly has been some encouraging steps being taken. So what are we going to do? I've decided that as many years as I've got left in me, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to helping to build an ethical society in South Africa. And I hope that you're going to join me, because we have to do it together. You see, somebody said to me the other day, I'm too small to make a difference. And there's that old story about if you've never spent a night alone with a mosquito in your room, you'll know that size doesn't really play a role, because that blessed mosquito can make your life hell. And he's so tiny and you're so big, and yet he can drive you completely mad. So we all need to become mosquitoes, but I think we should all become bees, because any of you who've ever experienced it or seen it, when bees start swarming, they cause absolute havoc. And that's what we need to do in South Africa. We need to stand up together like a swarm of bees and say, so far, no further. I'm not going to accept this in the area that I live and work. I'm going to make a stand. So I'm going to ask you to be a lighthouse, to shine, to join me like that lighthouse in shining a light of honesty and ethics and integrity into all the dark corners of the world. And we need to do it together. And we need to stand together, and we need to act together. So thank you very much for listening to me this morning, and I hope that you have benefited in some way from what I had to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, for a very informative talk, taking us into the psychology of corruption, taking us into morality behind it, what is needed to be a moral campus as we move, just taking us into the psyche of what actually happens and what ethics are and how we should be led by our values. In closing, I'd just like to wrap up just a few of the speakers that we've had today who've given us such valuable information. First and foremost, I'd just like to thank the city's Integrity Investigations Unit and the head of that unit and his entire team, Mr. Mbuso Ngobo, for having us together here today once again. Like I said, this is an annual seminar, and this year we've had to do it differently because of COVID-19 and all the protocols that we've had to observe, being off-site and meeting everybody online, presenting us with a new way and new opportunity of still getting the messages across and being able to campaign. We'd also like to thank the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and the representatives that are here today, both from a national level as well as from a provincial level here in KZN. Well, Mr. Mbuso Ngobo, when he first took the stand, he gave us a definition of fraud and the different forms of corruption, even going through many factors that other people would not realize are actually fraud. We've seen a lot of small businesses who actually go into collusion not knowing that collusion actually is a form of fraud. You also spoke, Mr. Ngobo, a lot about ethics and integrity and ethos, and you even called it unembeza, which takes us once again, and I think what I'm seeing today is that the theme of all the speakers are speaking to a moral aspect, they're speaking to an ethical aspect. We can't expect everybody to change their views of corruption. We can't expect people to change their behaviors without actually going into the behaviors. And as it's already been mentioned today, the behavior and the behavior change needs to start at the top, at the head. As in any organization, the tone is set from the top, be it a president, be it a CEO, etc., across various institutions, both corporate as well as within our government spheres as well. We then had Dr. Mpilo Ngubane, who spoke about the professionalization of government institutions and how the professionalization of those institutions can actually assist in deterring corruption and fraud, and things that we should look out for, and that he has urged officials to look out for, and other people within the authority would be telltale signs like an excessive lifestyle, certain political patronage where you find that certain behaviors are accepted and encouraged. The lack of consequence management sometimes within our systems. And then obviously the lack of a moral structures, moral values, and a moral culture. Because if you have that in place, you have to think about doing the right thing as an individual. And if we do the right things as individuals, it makes it easier for everybody else to behave as a collective. Some of the solutions that have been shared with us would be by Dr. Mpilo, was the professionalization of local government, ensuring that we have a highly effective regulatory environment, awareness and education, as we've seen throughout our municipality, rewarding ethical conduct for people so that they know that there is a reward for behaving in a certain way, which is a bit of a pity because you kind of hope that this is something that's ingrained in all of us. But I guess we are humans and we need reminders, and we work with incentives as well. Lynn as well, thank you so much, Lynn, for joining us today and for your very informative talk. Lynn is the KZN chairperson of the ACFE chapter here in KwaZulu-Natal, and he also spoke to us about ethics as well and compliance issues. So we can see how ethics, morality really has been the theme for this year. And as Brian mentioned earlier, you can't put someone else in charge of your morals. Ethics is a personal decision. And in closing, I'll just give you a quote from the president-elect of the US. I know it has nothing to do with us, but it touches on us, I guess, as a country, looking and seeing what's happening in organizations that in countries that we have known to be leaders of democracy, that we have known to be the moral compass of the truth, but once again, it goes to ethics. And here Joe Biden reminds us by saying, corruption is a cancer that eats away at a citizen's faith in democracy, diminishes the instinct for innovation and creativity, already tight national budgets crowding out important national investments. It wastes the talent of entire generations, and it scares away investments and jobs. And I think for me, just that one line that says it wastes away the talent of entire generations. I think if we cannot do the right thing for ourselves, can we please do the right thing for our future generations? And with that, I thank you. Thank you very much.
Well said. Well said. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, no,